Yeah, we're back. It's really cold. We've docked. I'm not going to say where we've docked. I'll let our guest today explain where we are. So yeah, first of all, Francois, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us something about where you are right now?
Yes, so I am François-Xavier de Vaujany. I'm professor at Université Paris-Dauphine. I'm also a researcher within a group called DRM, Dauphine Recherche en Management. And I'm mainly specialized in organization studies.
Okay, you've hit two questions out the park there straight away, so I'll pass over to Natalia.
Yes, I would like to ask you when and how did you first encounter practice theory?
I think it was a long time ago, more than 20 years ago, in the middle of my PhD dissertation. And at that time, there was this fashion about structuration theory and structurational perspectives. And for many people, it was obvious that it was a way to explore practices. The move from structure to structuration was also a practice turn. So it was part of the discussion at that time. And then the discussion has been open to a lot of topics close to this one, topics like process experience. But precisely my first encounter with a paper dealing with practice was at that time, 20 years ago, in the context of structuration theory.
And then you're still engaging in practice theory up until this day. And I wanted to ask what attracted you to practice theory, to practice theoretical perspective?
I'm tempted to say maybe something broader about experience and embodiment. I'm still interested in practice, but also topics like process and experience. Maybe I could say just a few things about what I'm working on. It's the relationship between new ways of working and societal transformations. And the idea is very simple. It's that in every organization of work activities, democracy and society is at stake. And that all our societies are covered by organizations, work practices. And so there is not, on the one hand, work practices, and on the other hand, democracy, society. But the two things are largely interwoven. So that's the key assumption of my work, and also something which is a direction, a political direction. So it means that, of course, practices are very important because they can be a locus of democracy, societal transformation. But my work also includes topics like, or concepts like images, events, becoming, which I see are interwoven or highly compatible with a practice-based view.
Your answer actually covered my next question, because I wanted to ask about the concepts that you are currently working with. Unless you want to add something about the concepts?
Yes, so in addition to the concept of practice, I use more and more two things. First, it's the concept of image based on Deleuze, which is very interesting to explore our situation today. We are images interacting, part of a broader image. And the work of Deleuze about cinema is fascinating to understand our situation, or a situation of remote work, telework. So I draw extensively on the work of Deleuze. And I also work on something more historical, which is the relationship between managerial practices and World War II. So the relationship between this war and the reconfiguration of management and managerial practices, which is in a way, yeah, maybe it's a way to come back to the notion of practice recently. Yes.
Very interesting. Thank you. Elizabeth?
Yeah, well, officially, I'm an anthropologist touring the world with this crew, kind of being interested in tribes. But before I get on to that, I'm going to cheat and go back a bit. I'm really interested in what you're doing with practice theory together with democracy. Tell me a little bit more about how that combination works out? Because we haven't heard anybody doing that kind of thing before.
Maybe to answer your question, I need to give a couple of details about my fieldwork. So I do mainly
that would be great.
organizational ethnographies and collaborative ethnographies, in particular in the context of collaborative spaces and third places. So things like co-working spaces, maker spaces, fab labs. And as soon as you start discussing or exploring a practice in this context, it's a very political practice, because you know, this idea of alone together, that's exactly the kind of problem they need to cope with. I mean, they are not really an organization. It's just people coming to sit the one another. They are mainly neighbors, and on the other hand, at some point they need to be a community. So which means that to do that, you need to get involved in the practice of community management, community building. You need to think about the relationship between your work practices and the practices of the guy next to your shoulder. So very quickly, the way you live your practices is a very political question, in the sense of togetherness, in the sense of co-designing kind of a common governance. And it's a very interesting caricatural environment to explore that kind of things.
Okay, so the political is in a way made of practices of a certain kind.
Yes, in a way, yes.
Maybe, in a way.
Yes, yes.
Right, let me get back on track. So yes, I'm an anthropologist. I'm traveling with these characters. You've already just mentioned some collaborators, and I'm interested to know, because I like tribes, because I'm an anthropologist, whether you're part of some kind of tribe, or are you sitting in your room on your own, thinking these great thoughts? How does that work out?
I love events and community building. That's maybe the way I would define my job as an academic. I love to build events, to meet people, and to build community. I think I did that all my life, and I've built several networks. One of them is OAP, Organizations, Artifacts and Practices. It's more about new materialism. So we started at LSE 13 years ago with Natalia, and it's every year we organize an event. It's a gypsy event. We go where people want of us. So we've been everywhere in the world, in Asia, South America, Europe, North America, and so on, everywhere. So it's more about new materialism. And there is a topic connected to practice. It's the topic of socio-material practices, which is often part of our discussions. The second network and community I feel part of, and that I try to co-design, it's the Dauphine Phenomenology Workshop, interested in phenomenologies, post-phenomenologies, perspectives. And here, for instance, issues of embodiment are part of our discussions. And there are a lot of links between the question of embodiment and the question of practices. So it's part of our discussions. And we started that 7 years ago. We set up with other colleagues and other network, IC2O. It's the idea is to build intercontinental conversations between Africa and Europe, Africa and South America, and to have that kind of intercontinental views in the discussions. And again, that's what I love to do. It's very philosophical. So it draws extensively, again, on post-phenomenological views and process perspectives. And the last thing I could mention, it's not a network I have designed or co-designed. It's a network I'm part of. It's EGOS, the European Group on Organization Studies.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you should join us, because we really like traveling around the world as well. But before we do, or perhaps to help us on our way, maybe you would like to suggest somewhere we should travel to next. Who should we have our next conversation with?
I think it would be good to go in the direction of Lyon and Damon Golsorky, with professor there. I think he's been one of the very first person in France who work on the topic of practices. He's collaborating with Linda Rouleau at HEC Montreal. So it's another expert about practice perspective. He co-edited with her a famous handbook in English about practice theories and organization studies. And so he's a big expert. And unfortunately, I guess it will be just a symbolic travel. But you should go at some point in Lyon. That's the place where the food is amazing in France, the best restaurant. It's a beautiful city. I hope you will have the opportunity to go there physically one day.
Yeah.
And for sure, your discussion with Damon will be very interesting in view of your questions.
Is that okay, Captain?
Yeah, that sounds really good to me. It's not too far away as well. So yeah, that would work. And then maybe we can think about getting over to Montreal.
Yeah, exactly. So what should we take? We've been collecting souvenirs on our travels around practice theory. What would you like to give us to take on our ship?
I will send you a picture of Saint-Exupéry, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. So it's the guy who wrote the Little Prince, and it's a picture of him in New York. He just arrived. It's the beginning of his big trip in New York. It's close to the beginning of World War II, and I love this picture because it's a picture about exile, loneliness in the middle of the city, modernity. You feel that it's for him the beginning of something big, and for the French literature, it's something big. It's a very fragile picture. So I will send it to you. It's a black and white picture, but I love this picture.
We'll take good care of it. So thank you very much for that little port call.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks for welcoming me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.